Are we about to observe the biggest exhibition game of the NCAA preseason? We've got North Carolina and the BYU Cougars squaring off in the Delta Center Friday night.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars with a crossover with Locked On Tar Heels. I'm Jake Hatch, host of Locked On Cougars, covering all things BYU. That across from me digitally is my man, Isaac Schade, host of Locked On Tar Heels, in addition to Locked On College Basketball. He's got you covered on the hoops front. And as always, all of these shows, your first listen of the day. A little bit of a special edition here, Isaac, is we're getting ready for basketball season. We're not in the middle of a football season here, but in the Delta Center in Salt Lake City on Friday night, we have got the North Carolina Tar Heels coming to Salt Lake to take on Kevin Young, AJ Dybantsa, and the rest of the BYU Cougars. And I don't think I'm out of line saying it might be the biggest exhibition game of the NCAA preseason.
Which, Jake, is saying something because, man, for all the crap we give the NCAA, holy cow, they got this one right. Letting teams play 2 exhibition games publicly against high major opponents. I mean, our game on Friday night is battling against multiple other like top 25 level basketball. Kansas at Louisville, for crying out loud, as an example. We've got St. John's in Michigan, I think Saturday.
There's some big ones.
Duke in Tennessee on Sunday. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, and the nice part is, despite the high-profile nature of all of these different matchups, Isaac, in the reality, they don't matter one bit.
Exactly. And yet, like, I was looking on Game Time, Jake, yesterday, and I think the lowest price ticket right now for our exhibition game is $103 inside the Delta Center. That's on one hand, that's crazy. On the other hand, that's incredible because, as you said, it doesn't matter other than the fact that we just get to watch all these dudes in action. Yes, our game, but all these other ones too, and kind of start to get a taste for what's going to be this season. We've already seen AJ drop 30. Yes, in a loss at Nebraska last week, but like you said, you're just getting out there and playing. We saw Cam Boozer drop 33 for Duke earlier this week against UCF. It's incredible stuff, Jake, and I absolutely love it.
Now, give me a sense, obviously speaking from the BYU perspective, you look at North Carolina's roster, and the headline may say, hey, they have 5 returning players, but the vast majority of those 5 guys aren't necessarily supposed to be part of this rotation, at least what I'm expecting. So give me a sense for my BYU fans out there who may be watching this and or listening to it, what to expect from North Carolina roster-wise.
Great question, Jake. So really, there's only 3 that were returning scholarship level players, and we got to use that term now because everyone's on scholarship with the new rules. But and the only one of those that really played a role last year was Seth Trimble, because the other 2, let me start with them just briefly, and we'll move on. Are James Brown, who was a freshman last year, basically 3rd string big, originally from Chicago, played his ball in high school down in Branson, Missouri at Link Academy, one of the kind of like juggernaut high school programs. Great kid, still learning, still developing. And then the other is Zayden High, who was not with the team last year, but he was a freshman 2 years ago, is back. I expect him to get backup minutes in the front court at the 4 or 5. He's a guy that can stretch out to the 3-point line, great energy, all that. But really, the only returner of consequence from previous seasons is Seth Trimble, who is a 4-year senior. His brother, JP, played for Carolina earlier in the 2000s. And, man, he is the captain, heart and soul of this team. I don't know that they've named an official captain, but you get my point. Yeah. He's the owner of the Ben & Jerry's on Franklin Street in Chapel Hill. I mean, it's just a great story in this day and age to have somebody that's sticking around doing it. Uber athlete, I expect him to start at the 2. And he's the guy that you will match up with whoever the opponent's best perimeter player is. So will that be Rob Wright? I doubt it. I think that'll be Kyan Evans matching up with him. So we'll see. But Seth, a defensive stopper and just superior athlete.
How is it? And this is just, I live across the country, but I've watched a lot of North Carolina basketball over the years. But I think of the Tyler Hansboroughs and just the different guys who are program guys from North Carolina who spend their entire 3 or 4 years playing in Chapel Hill. Like, what keeps guys in place there? Because that's a pretty rare thing in this day and age.
That's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of it is when you think of like these ACC and SEC college towns, like Chapel Hill is one of those just quintessential Southern college towns, man. It's a beautiful place to be, a lot of great weather. You think about like just the leaves this time of year. It's just a great community out in, right? Unlike so many, if you think of like Georgia Tech in the heart of Atlanta, that's not a college town, right? And so it's like, yeah, I mean, it's fine. And Atlanta's fun. I love it. I grew up in Atlanta, but it's not just like, I'm going to go to Athens, Georgia, or I'm going to go to, that Tuscaloosa or whatever it may be. Chapel Hill is that. And also the other thing specific to the basketball program, Jake, I would say is that it really is such a family where when you're back in the summers, guys are coming back and investing in you and pouring into you and bringing you into the fold of the Carolina family. And that is a real honest to goodness thing. And I know other schools talk about that and want to have that. Carolina actually does. And I think that's a big part of it as well.
Well, that sounds a lot like what Kevin Young's been building with BYU, and despite a short time here in Provo, is you're seeing more and more of these pro Cougars, is probably the best term to use, that come back and are working out with the team. They're going through workouts. I can tell you that you watch some of the highlights from their summer workouts. Guys like AJ Dybantsa were going up against some of these former Cougars like Charles Abuo, Zach Celius. Like, they may not be NBA guys, but they're playing professionally overseas, and they're coming back to Provo to work out, and they get runs with the current crop of BYU players. And you're right, that kind of builds the camaraderie across the generations.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's a great thing to see. I'm really loving what Coach Young is doing there, what he did first year at BYU, and excited to see it going forward.
All right, so we'll get more into the nuts and bolts momentarily, because I got a couple of questions about just lineups and what you expect from this game. I'm sure you got some from me when it comes to BYU, what to expect from AJ and Richie, Saunders, etc. We'll get into those momentarily as we roll on the special edition, a crossover edition of Locked On Cougars and Locked On Tar Heels. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Quo. It make a huge difference to your business owners. It's formerly known as Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system you heard us talk about previously on the Locked On Podcast Network, just with the new name. Here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table for you as a consumer, a business owner. And when every customer conversation counts, you need the phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. It's the number one business phone system that streamlines your customer communications. It works right through an app or on your computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline that can go unanswered. The built-in AI agent is a game changer, answering after-hours calls, capturing leads, and keeping your business moving forward even when you're off the clock. Whether you're a solo operator juggling everything or part of a larger team, Quo makes it easy to stay responsive and professional all along the way. See why over 90,000 businesses are trusting Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's QUO.com/lockedoncollege. You can even keep your existing number for free. It's all courtesy of your friends over at Quo. No missed calls and no missed customers. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars and Locked On Tar Heels your first listen of the day. We're proud to be part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where, of course, we like to say it's your team every single day. And Isaac, looking at this matchup between the Tar Heels and the Cougars, the Tar Heels are a legendary, like just true blue blood in college basketball, where BYU may be what you consider maybe a Johnny-come-lately as they try and enter that fray. But North Carolina hasn't won consistently at a top shelf level over the last 3-4 years. There's been moments where they've risen up, other moments where they've sagged back. So I guess looking at this at the outset of a basketball season, what's the expectation level from Tar Heel fans for what the Tar Heels are supposed to do?
That's a great question, because it truly has been a roller coaster in the Hubert Davis era, from making the national championship game his first year, including ending Coach K's career, to missing the tournament the next year after being preseason number 1, to being a 1 seed the next year, to sneaking into the tournament by the skin of their teeth, probably not correctly so last year. And so it's funny, Jake, because I think nationally, there's a lot of hesitancy with North Carolina because of that unpredictability in the first 4 years of the Davis era. I think even internally inside the Carolina fan base, there's a lot of last year. The supreme issue was lack of size, specifically in the front court, where Carolina had struck out, quite frankly, in the transfer portal to land a big to go alongside RJ Davis in his last year. What they've been able to do this offseason is gain size everywhere, including having 6 players on this roster who are 6'10" or taller. And looking at, you and I have talked about some of the undersized BYU players. And so that, we can talk more in a second about that, but that's part of what North Carolina really targeted this offseason, was getting bigger. They have the capability, if they need to go 6'10", 7 foot from the 3, 4, and 5 positions. I don't think they'll start that way, but I think you will get that at 4 and 5. But I think we'll get that jumbo lineup some. So because of that size, because of what I see is much better roster construction this year in terms of the complementary pieces playing well together, I have higher expectations this year. I think some of the Tar Heels fan base is starting to wrap their brain around it more. I think they personally, from someone who has to study all the teams around the nation, I do think Carolina is being overlooked, as unhomerly as I can say that. And I'm not saying they should be a top 10 team preseason, but I do think 15 to 20 is probably a more appropriate range for them, which is not all that much higher than 25th. But I'm really believing what I'm seeing.
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of ask a question that I want you to answer, but I think I have an answer for. That's a really roundabout way to ask it. But BYU's ranked 8th, and this is the highest the Cougars have ever been ranked in a preseason poll. In fact, they've only done 6 other times in their history as a basketball program. So, speaking as a guy who BYU is known as more of a football school versus North Carolina, where it's been more traditionally a basketball school. So where's the sweet spot for this in terms of where BYU expectation levels should be set versus what reality may be?
I truly think that BYU's is pretty spot on where the AP voters got them preseason. Basically anywhere from 6 to 10 was going to be right to me preseason on paper, right? And it's so hard in this portal age, regardless of sport, to get it spot on. But with the collection of talent, with what we expect from AJ, with what we know Keba can do, with what we know Rob Wright did last year in Waco, with what we know that Kennard Davis is bringing from Southern Illinois, and you think about, I haven't even said Richie Saunders' name yet. Good grief, right? And so I think that collection and the way it goes together, and then, you think about guys like Dawson Baker coming off the bench, for example. I think the pieces are in place. The talent is there, and I think it comes together well enough to be in that range where the Cougars are. So I think it's about right. While knowing, if I could say a word to the BYU fan base, it's don't get too preoccupied with, if we don't live up to being 8th, we're a failure. That's just a target throw that a bunch of AP voters around the country threw at what they thought teams could be. If BYU turns out to be a top 3 team in the nation, don't look at it and be like, those AP idiots didn't know what they were talking about. Well, nobody would have known with it, right? And so I think as BYU's trying to find their way into that upper echelon, it's like it's a great talking point, but just go out and play and then start evaluating who are we actually as a team.
Okay, so I got one more question on my end, then I'll let you do whatever you need to ask in terms of BYU. Who are the 3 players? Seth Trimble may be one of them you've already mentioned, obviously, him being a 4-year guy there in Chapel Hill. But for BYU fans looking at this game on Friday night, who are the 2 or 3 players that they should know in this matchup?
Well, I think because of the AJ Dybantsa of it all, I think I should start then with Caleb Wilson of it all, who's also one of the top 10 players in this class. Caleb will be Carolina's starting 4, and with AJ kind of in, I know he's like an NBA 3, but I expect most of the season he'll be playing the 4 for BYU. We saw these guys go head to head. For those who don't keep up with recruiting, they were in the Peach Jam Championship against each other 2 summers ago, with AJ and Tyron Stokes, who's right at the top of 26, going up against Caleb Wilson and the Boozer twins, who are off at Duke right now. They would often go head to head. And then there was one of the all-star, I can't remember if it was McDonald's or another one, where they were guarding each other and going at it. And it was a lot of fun. So Caleb Wilson, watch for him. He's a little bit of a 2-way guy. He's not like the walking bucket type of guy. He's going to get his points, but he's more about I just do winning things for my team kind of guy. Okay. And so that'll be a super fun matchup to watch. Another is Henri Veesaar, who BYU played against last year in the Big 12, coming over from Arizona, where Carolina didn't do well in the front court last offseason. They went right out and got Veesaar this past offseason, and so he'll be the guy to helm the center position. And then I would also mention Luka Bogavac coming over from Montenegro, where it's been this whole process of getting him cleared, but he's been playing professionally for a couple years now in the Adriatic League, and is seasoned. He's 22. He's going to have 2 years of eligibility, and really good shooter, just wise and crafty. He's not this uber athlete guy, but he's, knows how to beat you and knows how to play. The question is, will he play Friday night? We don't know yet because Carolina had a scrimmage last week. He came up a little gimpy, but also there's weird stuff with his eligibility where it was Coach Davis announced this week that the NCAA has now cleared him, but there's something on the Carolina end. It's weird, and so we don't know. And then it's all brought together at the point guard position by Kyan Evans, who transfers in from Colorado State, who went to the second round of the NCAA tournament along with Neek Clifford last year, who's going to be the starting point guard. And so that's kind of the guys to watch for. There's some much better depth for Carolina, but we'll save that for another day.
All right. Well, there you go. I'm interested to see how this all plays out because you're right. Caleb Wilson kind of is, I think, is the headliner because that matchup between him and AJ, man, it could be a special one.
Very much so, Jake. I'm really excited to see how it plays out.
All right. So anything that you need to know from BYU's perspective? You already mentioned that AJ went for 30 against Nebraska, but what else do you want to know about the Cougars?
I think what I want to know, because a lot of people, you look at Carolina's height that they've gained this offseason, and I think that people might look at BYU's not as much height and maybe short sell the Cougars. But Jake, let Carolina folks listening understand how the BYU conglomerate, I'll say, comes together to play better than their size might suggest.
So Kevin Young's philosophy is he values athleticism over straight up height. And Keita is going to be their starting center, and he stands 6'8". But if you pay attention to a little bit of his background, his siblings are professional volleyball players. He's got a brother who plays professionally, I think, in Asia, can jump 45 inches in the air, and he's got the same height as Keba. And that athleticism is translated over to Keba, and he's about as chiseled an athlete as you're going to see in terms of he looks like he's chiseled out of granite. So what he lacks for in height, he makes up for in athleticism and just straight up hops. So he'll be able to hold up. The guy that's been really impressive to me in the preseason so far in their scrimmage, and obviously their blue and white scrimmage, and then obviously the game against, or actually exhibition against Nebraska, was Hadim Mboop. Now, he is an NBA Africa Academy graduate who spent the last half of last season redshirting for BYU and has really transformed his body, Isaac. I'm telling you, he can guard anything from, it feels like, from the 2 to 5, but he is going to be a nice piece to have as an interior just blanket, I guess, to be able to back up a guy like Keita. And the nice part is BYU, even if they do find themselves in foul trouble in the front court, they've got enough bodies, it feels like, to kind of shuffle guys in and out and be able to make do with what they've got. Because while they may not have a true, defensive stopper, Xavier Staten maybe ends up being that down the line, but he's still fairly raw right now. What they lack for in terms of overall size, they make up for in their athleticism.
Jake, tell me, because obviously we know these rosters a little more in depth, but for people that all they know of BYU is, wow, the AJ Dybantsa went there. My man, could you help people understand just how good Richie Saunders is and how massive it is to get him back this year?
Well, that's the thing is Richie went from being like the ultimate glue guy. We had guys like John Rothstein calling him the ultimate sixth man to becoming the Big 12's most improved player last year and a first-team all-conference honoree. His transformation has been absolutely remarkable, and all he's done is just work and work and work. And guys like John Rothstein are saying he can make 100 3-pointers this year. Now, it's going to require a lot of looks to do that, but he made 89 a season ago, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. He has transformed himself into a legit NBA prospect, and had you told me that when he showed up at BYU after his mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I would have been like, let's pump the brakes a little bit on that. But he's really become a phenomenal piece. And I think the tandem between him and AJ, the offense is going to flow through those two guys with Rob Wright kind of playing that tertiary role. But the nice part is they can all play off one another and they're all capable of taking over in individual circumstances.
Man, that's so fun. Jake, ultimately, I guess maybe last question. Look, exhibitions, as you said, Wins and losses, it doesn't matter. Points doesn't matter. What was the response from the BYU fan base after losing at Nebraska last week, where, again, it doesn't matter, but I know it's like when there's all these heightened expectations, how did everybody handle that?
It was a mixed bag because BYU had a chance to win that game. They had about, I think it was like 12 seconds or so. And they had sat AJ and Richie and these guys for, I think, 3 or 4 minutes down the stretch. And they were playing with a lot of backups. You mentioned like what the reaction was. They wanted to see AJ and Richie come in and win that game and run a set. Now they put a play in action for Alexi Kostic, who, much like North Carolina, he's an Adriatic League veteran himself who's come over to BYU. He missed a decent look at a three-pointer, and Kevin Young just wanted to see what that group on the court could do in that circumstance because, as we mentioned, it doesn't matter. But, yeah, there were some Cougar fans who wanted to see them maybe run a play for like AJ or Richie and win that game. And I think had they played those guys more down the stretch, they probably do win that game. But the nice part was Kevin Young said, no, I'm going to trust the guys I got out there right now and see what they can do.
Jake, I lied. One last question. North Carolina, Chapel Hill, North Carolina is 400 something feet in elevation. Salt Lake City, Utah is 4,000 something feet in elevation.
Yeah.
For those who might not get it or have experienced it, just how much harder is it to play nearly a mile high?
It's harder, it is, but in this day and age, these athletes are so well conditioned that it does not have the effect that it used to have. Because I can tell you, as a guy who grew up rooting for the Utah Jazz, trust me, the Delta Center used to be one of the premier like home court advantages because NBA players would come in from, like, let's say, North Carolina, where it's near sea level, and be playing at 4,800 feet or whatever. I don't remember what Salt Lake's elevation is at exactly, but it did affect those athletes more back in the day. Now with how conditioned these athletes are, it doesn't have the same effect, but it does have an effect when it comes to a game where BYU, they let you out and run in transition. That's when it starts to catch up with you because all of a sudden that air's a little bit thinner and your lungs are burning a little bit more.
Oh, man. All right, Jake, this game is 9 Eastern time. Salt Lake City, as you said, at the Delta Center where the Jazz play. You can catch it on ESPN Plus. It's only streaming, gang. Don't be trying to turn on your TV and find it on CBS or something because you ain't gonna happen upon it. I'll guarantee you that right now. Jake, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Should be a lot of fun. Isaac, as always, thanks for taking the time, man, and we'll see how it all plays out Friday night.
Yes, sir.
All right, Isaac, and real quick before people go, if Cougar fans want more of your content, where can they find you?
Yes, I'm at Locked on Tar Heels every day on the show. And if you're interested in national college basketball, come find me and my co-host Andy Patton on Locked on College Basketball every day, man. We have a blast talking all sorts of everything college basketball. It's all here. We are like a week and a half away from the tip of the regular season. I'm most active social media wise on Twitter at Isaac Schade.
Yeah, and if Tar Heel fans, you want more BYU content, search out Locked on Cougars, wherever you get your podcasts, also available on YouTube. And yeah, like Isaac said, I'm most active on X, a.k.a. Twitter as well. Jacob C. Hatch or Locked on Cougars. You can find me at either one of those locations. But as always, thank you for making these fine podcasts your first listen of the day. And until next time, thank you for being right here on the Locked on Podcast Network, where it is, of course, your team every day.
Peace.